Hey everyone, and welcome back to another college logo ranking. Today we are going to be looking at the Big Ten. This is one that I've been really looking forward to. I know a lot of you guys have. We're going to do our best to go ahead and just breeze through the intro here and get right into it because we do have 18 teams to look at today. Go ahead and just ignore the 10 in the Big Ten name of this conference. There are now 18 teams after the crazy sort of shift in college athletics that we've seen with a ton of teams kind of jumping ship. I'm really hoping that you guys are into single letters to represent teams because we have a lot of those to get into. That being said, let's go ahead and get into it with our number 18 pick, the Illinois Fighting Illini. I'm going to be honest, this logo to me has very little redeeming qualities. This is a logo that I have never, ever cared for. I'm sorry, Illini fans. I understand that it's a big I and there's not a ton that you can do with that. Creatively, it doesn't really allow a whole lot of flexibility here, but they've definitely used a lot more impressive designs over the years versus what they're using now with just the most generic block I and this really intense color combination of kind of this navy blue with this bright orange. It's not the most attractive color combination for me personally. Kind of safe logo overall. I mean, you can't really go wrong with this, but it doesn't lend itself to anything particularly interesting. And I would say the same is true at number 17 with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. We can see, again, just a very generic looking single letter to represent the school or the programs, in this case, this big red N. And I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, they've been using this logo for quite a while, but it feels kind of odd then that Nebraska, it's like they can't even commit to using this N like on their football helmets. They have this even worse, just single red N. It's so bad. I don't know why they've been using this for the last few years, but this helmet is truly like one of the worst. I would say actually the single worst helmet in all of college athletics. This is horrible. The single stroked red N is so bad. But I mean, the actual N, it's not a whole lot better. But in fairness, they have been using this logo again for just a very long time. So big props to that. Kind of like what we said with Illinois. It's a really safe route to go with just kind of this varsity block lettering. But also, like we said with Illinois, it just doesn't lend itself to anything particularly exciting. And again, the same is true with our number 16 pick, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I will say with this pick at number 16, the scarlet does shine through on this big red R. I mean, they are the Scarlet Knights. We need some scarlet, and we definitely have it. This R is a lot more bold, and it does look a little bit more unique than just the standard block lettering that we've seen with Nebraska and Illinois. I really like the big curve in the R, and I'm kind of grasping at straws here because beyond that, not a ton of excitement to be shared about this Rutgers logo here. I much prefer some of their older logos that we could see in actual Knights with some of their branding here, but they decided to kind of just strip all that away at some point and just stick with just this big red R. Not the best, not the worst. I love seeing the scarlet really pop through, but beyond that, not much else we could say about Rutgers. I mean, starting out with kind of a slow burn here, guys, with the Big Ten, Illinois, Nebraska, Rutgers, all just kind of a generic single letter. And we will see more of that coming up in this league here, or this conference rather. So let's go ahead and knock out a couple more single letters here at number 15 with Northwestern, the Wildcats. Now, if you've seen a number of videos on this channel, you know how much I appreciate the color purple. And if this is your first time viewing this channel, first of all, welcome. And you'll see a trend with me really appreciating the color purple with logos and branding. Northwestern here, that purple is so pretty. I mean, it just really pops. Everything that they've used from like a historical aspect with their branding here has always had elements of purple, and I'm a huge fan of that. I just feel that as a whole, this N just feels a little scrunched, almost like it's trying to like shy away from the other team that they're matched up against. It's definitely a unique font. I will credit them that. At number 14, let's go to Purdue, home of the Boilermakers. And you can definitely see the trend that we're on, which is writing out single letters to represent the athletic programs here. In Purdue's case, we have a nice kind of like golden P with a real thick black outline. So we're getting into some territory here, gaining traction with some actually nice things to kind of say about these logos here. In Purdue's case, I mean, we mentioned this with Rutgers, and I could have said the same thing about Northwestern. I think that I really liked their logos best when they incorporated elements of what their actual mascot or what their branding is. In this case, of the Boilermakers, which is by far one of the most unique names in college athletics. And historically, they really took advantage of that by incorporating elements of a train logo or Purdue Pete, who is the name of their mascot, just this big burly Boilermaker boy. I really appreciate seeing teams that use elements of their mascot into their logo. I just think it's so much stronger from like a branding standpoint. And so this P for Purdue that we have today, again, it's quite nice. It actually has a good amount of like energy and flow to it, with just the way they've designed it. But I have always respected and appreciated those other elements more with the train, with Purdue Pete. I love those looks. But overall, Purdue really can't complain with this gold P. I really enjoy it. At number 13, let's go to Maryland, home of the Terrapins. And at the risk of beating a dead horse and really just repeating myself ad nauseum here, Maryland looked best when they incorporated elements of their terrapin, their turtle here. Again, very, very unique name here. And so having elements of that terrapin into their logo, I think was when Maryland was at its peak. But we can see this nice red M here with a yellow outline. That looks really strong enough on its own. But then to have that banner across the bottom, incorporating the elements of the Maryland flag here, which is one of probably I would say the most unique state flag. And so I love that the University of Maryland has leaned into that, not just with their logo here, with having that banner across the bottom, but with their uniforms. I mean, they've had some of the most unique football uniforms for sure. And I know these can be really polarizing for a lot of people. You absolutely love this or you despise it. I personally love this. So Maryland here, absolutely killing it. But again, I would just so much rather see elements of that terrapin included. It's kind of what's bringing me down a little bit. I just wish we had a little bit more of that. At number 12, let's get a look at one of our brand new teams entering the Big Ten for 2024. This is USC, home of Southern California, with a very simple yet effective S and C interlocking varsity block lettering. That again, it's very simple, but it works very well. This is one of the most well-known logos in college athletics, which is actually true for every logo that we're going to talk about today. These are very historic and iconic logos. The Big Ten is, we haven't even really talked about the history of the Big Ten very much, but it's the oldest conference in college athletics. It's been around forever. So USC, welcome to the Big Ten. I mean, the Big Ten is going to be so much stronger overall from having teams like USC in it. And I welcome this logo. I think it's great. It's something that they really haven't had to change a whole lot throughout the years. You know, what's benefiting this logo for me, and maybe this isn't really fair for every other logo that we talked about already because they just had a single letter to represent the school, but the fact that this university has two letters that it can play off of kind of gives a little bit of room to work with from like a creative standpoint. And this interlocking SC, it's simple, it works really well, it's really stately, and it has a power to it that some of these other programs that we've talked about just don't. The Trojan logo that they use on their helmet always looks super sick too. I really like that look. You know, they've had this other Trojan logo that they've used for a long time, which they've recently kind of modernized, but just sticking with this interlocking S and C, you really can't go wrong. USC, really strong, powerful logo here. At number 11, let's stay in Southern California. This is the University of California at Los Angeles, better known as UCLA, home of the Bruins and home of probably my favorite color combination in uniforms that we're going to talk about today. I mean, I have always loved this color combo that UCLA has used. And more important than that, as far as our purposes for today's video, I've always really loved and appreciated this logo as well. It's very simple and stately with kind of this cursive UCLA that in my opinion is just very understated and classy. Honestly, this is exactly what I had mentioned when we did our video on the ACC and I ranked Pitt and Cal so high. I got flamed for that a little bit, but I stand by it. I love just these nice, simple, cursive script logos. I think they look really clean and really sharp. And with the color of this too, with that kind of Bruin blue is what I'm going to call it. I love it. I think that is just a sick color combination. I love the font that they're using for this cursive UCLA. Everything about this works for me. And I stand by what I said with Cal and Pitt in our ACC video. I stand by UCLA. I think this is a gorgeous logo. And it doesn't offend me that they're not leaning into their Bruin design. I'm okay with that here because this is just simple and classy and just very nice overall. Big fan of this. At number 10, let's go to Indiana, home of the Hoosiers. And I'm just going to make a direct comparison of this logo to Illinois, who we had at dead last. And this is up so many spots higher, like closer towards the middle, because unlike Illinois, Indiana is utilizing the I and the U for Indiana University, which is a very smart move because just a single I doesn't really do a whole lot. I is a difficult letter to kind of make stand out. So including the U for Indiana University and creating this like trident shape is so smart. I mean, this works so well. That trident design is iconic, honestly. And iconic is probably a word that we're going to get thrown around a lot in this video today because of just how old and historic a lot of these programs are. But I feel it's appropriate in this case because we have an I. We're talking about an I team. So I for iconic, Indiana University, home of the Hoosiers. Sick logo. This is doing a lot with very little. And that stacked IU making this trident here, unbelievably cool. At number 9, let's go to Michigan State University, home of the Spartans. This is the first logo that we're going to look at in this ranking that uses a primary logo that does not have any lettering. So instead of seeing a big M or an MSU for Michigan State, we just see this really, really awesome kind of silhouette of this Spartan soldier here. Kind of been different variations of this over the years, but they've been using this specific logo since 1977. So big props to that. That's 50 years of using this logo, and it looks just as fresh and clean as it did when it was unveiled in 1977. And it feels like there's so many high schools or even like junior varsity programs all over the world that kind of steal this logo. It's a very theft-heavy logo that a lot of public schools use, and there's a reason for that. I mean, this has looked great, like I said, for 50 years. This is something that they don't super have to change. It has a very strong presence to it, especially with that green that they use. Like Michigan State has always had just awesome coloring. I mean, this is a real nice break from just seeing like letters to represent the universities here, but there's only 3 of those schools in this 18 that we're going to talk about. So appreciate Michigan State while we're looking at it, because at number 8, we're switching right back to a single letter with Washington here. Now, props to Washington, who has probably my favorite vintage throwback logos that we're going to look at throughout this video here. I mean, just take a second to appreciate every single one of these good boys mixed in with all these really gorgeous W's that we've seen throughout the years here. I mean, Washington has always had a really strong W to represent University of Washington, and their current version that they're going on now, just this big purple W. Again, big fan of purple here. This has this gorgeous gold trim on the outside, and those colors for their school here lend themselves gorgeously to the uniforms here. I mean, Washington has always looked so nice with that big stately W on the helmet here. I mean, this is one of the smartest quote unquote schools that we're going to be talking about here in this video. But again, you could say that about so many of these schools. These are a lot of like very academically prestigious schools, but I really feel like in Washington's case here, that W looks bold and strong from an athletic standpoint, and also kind of stoic and proud and prestigious from an academic standpoint. So Washington here, this W is doing a whole lot. Gorgeous logo, and Washington also plays in one of my favorite venues in college football, so big shout out to that. At number 7, on Wisconsin, home of the Badgers here, with another gorgeous W here. We're just looking at back-to-back dubs here. What gives me the nod for this W over Washington's, that crisp red, first of all, looks gorgeous, but this also has just a lot more kind of like motion and flow to it, with a little bit of that drop shadow that it's giving, that black drop shadow, kind of makes this logo pop. It's bold, it's strong, it's powerful, but it's also got motion and flow and energy to it, and I love it for that. You know, Wisconsin, again, we can talk about some of like the greatest throwback logos, like all of these look incredible, and they really kind of stuck the landing on their W in the 1950s. They kind of decided, okay, instead of having like this badger, let's just kind of focus on like the W to represent the whole state of Wisconsin, and they killed it. This looks fantastic. Yeah, this W is working for me. Back-to-back dubs here with Washington and Wisconsin. At number 6, our current FBS champions, the Michigan Wolverines. This logo was really, really difficult for me to place here. You know, on one hand, we have a font that looks very similar to Illinois and Nebraska, teams that we put at the bottom of this list. So I'm sure there's people at home going, what the hell? Why did my team Nebraska or Illinois get put at last, and this team Michigan, why is it all the way up here in the top 6 when we're talking about 18 teams here? I mean, credit where credit is due. Michigan has been using this logo in some capacity since the 1960s, and I truly feel that it has stood the test of time. This gets the benefit of having symmetry with the letter M for Michigan, and that symmetry combined with the boldness and kind of the thickness of this big M and that bright yellow lend itself to one of the most iconic and recognizable logos in the history of college athletics. You know, this isn't just a generic yellow. This is, they call it maize, and you get in trouble if you go to Michigan and you call this yellow. It is maize. Maize and blue are the official colors of the University of Michigan. I promise you this is the last time I'm going to use the word iconic in this video, and if I use it again, so be it. But this truly is one of the most iconic logos in college athletics. Well deserving of a spot this high. This logo just feels so strong and so powerful, and it's kind of interesting too because you won't see this on the helmets of Michigan. They use one of the most iconic helmet designs in all of college football, and I love these helmets. I think they're so sick. This M, I mean, there's just power to it. I love it. At number 5, let's go to another really strong, powerful M. This is the University of Minnesota. We're kind of doing everything in pairs today, unintentionally, but as we're putting this down and recording it, I'm realizing kind of the patterns here. But yeah, the University of Minnesota been using this logo since 1986 to kind of connect all of their branding as a whole, because they really just kind of had, up until that point, Goldie Gopher, the name of their mascot, just kind of dressed in whatever sport that team happened to be playing in, whether it was football, baseball. My favorite version of that is hockey. This hockey logo is one of the best I've ever seen. I just love like the characterization of Goldie, and his personality really shines through. But yeah, in 1986, bringing this logo here to kind of unionize all of these sports programs and put them under one just sort of distinct and unique logo here. And I actually really like this design over Michigan. I think that, you know, the lettering is just a little bit more unique, and I love like the thick serifs on everything. I mean, there's 5 total serifs in here, and they just kind of have this like blocky power to it, for lack of a better way to phrase that. I like this shape and design more than the Michigan M, which is why I have it ranked higher. I feel that Minnesota really underrated logo here. We don't talk about this M enough. I feel like Michigan gets all the credit here. But yeah, this gold and maroon M here, incredible. I really love this design. Minnesota, sneaky underrated pick here for Big Ten. At number 4, let's go to another of the most recognizable logos in college athletics. This is Penn State, home of the Nittany Lions. Again, a very unique name for a college athletic team. Oh, here it comes. Very iconic name and logo here. Big fan of this. Penn State really has not had to change anything over the years. They kind of tried something else out in the early 2000s, which is kind of like a more, I don't want to say modernized, but it was just like kind of like an updated look to what they were using in the 80s and even before that. But they went back to it in 2005, so we're talking 20 years ago, and the rest is history. I mean, this looks fantastic. There was a reason that they went back to it after a couple years of trying something new out. All their vintage marks have looked really great too. I mean, Penn State has done some really unique things here, but what they're using now, there's this current Nittany lion here, which, by the way, this is only the second logo that we've mentioned here that's using the actual like mascot instead of like a lettering for the school here. I just love the subtle toughness and fierceness that's coming from this logo. Like, it looks like this lion here, this Nittany lion, he's not roaring, he doesn't look fierce in that regard, but he just looks composed and patient. And I just think that's just kind of like a really unique way to kind of take like a mascot logo, instead of giving him like an angry expression or like showing fangs or teeth or something like that, like snarling or growling. He looks tough and composed, and I really like that. I think that's just a very cool look to this logo. There's kind of an understated power to the way that Nittany lion looks here. I'm also a huge fan of Penn State, just like the football uniforms in general. They just have like the solid white helmets with nothing on them. You know, they got the helmet stickers, of course, but just that solid white, no last names on the back of the jersey. That's a very unique thing that Penn State does. And that combination of that white and that really crisp, like dark blue that they use, incredible. Love Penn State here. This looks awesome. Love their branding. Well deserving of a top 5 spot. But guys, before we reveal our top 3, encourage you to go ahead and like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. We are going to be going through every FBS conference, ranking all of the team logos. So if you haven't seen your conference yet, go ahead and click and subscribe, and you will be seeing it here in the coming weeks. Appreciate you guys clicking and hang out. Let's get back to our top 3. Starting with Ohio State University, who, according to this ranking list, is beating Michigan, one of the biggest rivalries in college athletics. There you go, Buckeye fans. I got Ohio State over Michigan. While I love the current version that they're using with that Ohio State text going through that big scarlet O, I think this logo was at its peak when it used the actual Buckeye or the Buckeye leaf. It's in some form or another within the logo. Still keeping that scarlet O in the background there to represent the O for Ohio State. But the current version still completely works for me here. I love the font that they're using for Ohio State. I love the sleekness, the energy, where it's got this nice curve to it. And that S again in the negative space of the scarlet O just really pops out. And I love that the O for Ohio State at the beginning there and the E in state at the end are a little elongated. They're a little larger, and it just kind of creates this really kind of powerful banner in just the text of Ohio State on its own. I'm a huge fan of this overall. I'm gonna say it again. Iconic logo here. Drink every time I say iconic. You're gonna be just absolutely blitzed by the end of this video here. But Ohio State, incredible branding. Some of these top ones were really difficult to rank, but I feel strongly with Ohio State at number 3, as I do with our number 2 pick, the Oregon Ducks, our 4th and final fresh face from the Pac-12 coming over to the Big Ten here. And yeah, what a beauty of a logo. What a beauty. Just was some of the best branding in college athletics as a whole. I mean, just ask Nike, who's given Oregon some million different combinations of football uniforms. It's always kind of like fun to watch Oregon football every Saturday just to see what kind of crazy combination uniform they're going to roll out with. But what they've been using lately is actually kind of a throwback logo that they were using in the 90s with a stacked UO. I really like the color combination specifically that they've been using with these throwback logos here with that UO. That really crisp green and yellow pops so nicely. It looks so great. But I mean, they've been using this current O logo since the late 90s, and it's become an iconic logo, not even just for college athletics, but for the whole state of Oregon. We had mentioned in our ACC video that Miami is one of the few universities that gets like their own unique hand sign, and Oregon, I mean, you throw up that O for Oregon for the Ducks here, you flash that up real quick, and it's just a sick way to kind of say like, hey, go Ducks. Very few programs get the benefit of having a hand signal like that, but Oregon's simple and iconic O lend itself to being able to do something like that, and I think it's just so sick. You know, I love that the sides of that O get a little wider and they get a little skinny at top, kind of just gives it a little bit more uniqueness than just like a perfectly symmetrical O. But I love the simple and understated power behind this logo. Iconic. There it is again. Drink because I said it. However, for our number 1 pick, we got to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, this is our 3rd and final pick of these 18 teams that is not using lettering to represent their school as a primary mark. This is using the actual Hawkeye logo, this black Hawkeye with a gold outline, and it is so tough, so fierce, so sick looking. Like this is a clear number 1 pick for iconic. There it is again, drink. logos in the Big Ten. This really stands out to me by using, again, not a single letter or a word mark to go, but actually showing the Hawkeye. This is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's see it. Let's see that Hawkeye with that real fierce expression, that open beak that is just ready to like bite down. This looks awesome, and it has throughout their years. They've used some really interesting kind of branding, you know, all centered around the Hawkeye. Again, I is a pretty tricky letter to use. Just ask Illinois. It doesn't hurt that I'm also a big Steeler fan, so I think that these just look gorgeous because this is what I like to look at on Sunday with these very similar uniforms here. Ignore the uniforms and you're still left with a very sick primary logo for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Love looking at this. Yeah, very well deserving of a #1 spot. I'm gonna say it one last time if you're not thirsty enough. Very iconic looking logo here. And y'all, that's going to do it for our Big Ten ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, again, be sure and go ahead and like and subscribe so you can stick around for future uploads where we will be talking again about every single FBS conference, ranking all the logos in every single conference. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for clicking. Thanks for hanging out. We will catch you in the next video.